Welcome everybody to this meeting of the Children's Select Committee on the 16th of July. We'll just start with apologies. Are there any apologies or substitutions for this meeting? Ellen, she's gone behind me.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've had apologies from Councillor Jackie Lay and Councillor Sam Blackwell, but we have Councillor Ross Henning substituting him today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ross. Minutes of the previous meeting. It's been brought to my attention that John Hawkins was present at the meeting, but his name was not included. So can we amend that, please? You have. Brilliant. I would also like to add that co-opted members to the welcome extended to the committee. Apologies to John, who is a long-standing and valued member of the committee. He wasn't acknowledged last time, but I see he. It's very unlike him. He's not here.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll amend those minutes as quickly as possible. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Chairman's announcements. I just wanted to thank Councillor Julie Vine, who has kindly agreed to be the Wiltshire representative on Adoption West Joint Scrutiny Panel, and to Councillor John Wells, who has committed to be the representative on the High Needs Block Board. And from reading your resumes, both of you, I couldn't think of two more suited people, so thank you very much for that, and your expertise will go a long way, so thank you for your input. And just to thank Joe Trigg for your previous input, because you were invaluable there as well. Sorry. Yep. Yes, it's not on my script. I don't think that's a script. The minutes from the previous meeting that were held on the 11th of June, has anyone got any comments, or is everyone happy to approve them as per just the one amendment about John Hawkins? Good. Those are approved. Thank you very much. So have we received any questions from the public?
None that I'm aware of, Chair.
Oh, John, you are here. That's okay. Yeah, problems with your thing. We were just saying that we hadn't acknowledged you at the last meeting, and we just want to thank you for your previous hard work and your continued support. And you might need a glass of water because it is quite hot in this room. Brilliant. So, oh, John is getting extra water. John, you're the next item on the agenda. Yes. Yeah. All right. Well, I can jump to portfolio holders. We'd like an update from the portfolio holders and the chairman as to, well, no, because we're saying the portfolio holders can do it as we go along in the agenda. But John, is there anything you'd like to update the committee on in your role as cabinet member for Children's
Thank
Services?
you, Jess. I remember this bit being at the end in the old days. So
I brought it up to the
new
front. So you
broom, new
can't
changes. I can't keep track of all of this. Good morning, folks. I will repeat just a couple of things that I said just now because I think they're really important. One of them was about the dyslexia schools. And I was really chuffed I was beyond chuffed. I was really proud on Thursday to attend the awarding of dyslexia-friendly status to another cohort of schools in Wiltshire. Brings us up to 22 schools now with dyslexia-friendly status, with another 6 who are finishing off meeting the required standards and will be being assessed shortly. What that actually means is across the 4 nations of the United Kingdom, over 1/3 of the registered dyslexia-friendly schools are here in the county of Wiltshire. And I think that's something we should all be incredibly proud of. We've got 75,000 learners in our schools. 10,000 of those are now being educated in dyslexia-friendly schools. And a dyslexia-friendly school isn't just going to be helping people with dyslexia. The teaching techniques, the individual learning plans, the methods of interacting with the young people means that any learner with any form of additional need is going to be benefiting from the teaching methods that are employed. I give credit, Laura, that this has been part of what this council has done previously, and I absolutely guarantee you it's what we'll be continuing. It's a really superb programme. Last night, the West team, which is our specialist team for giving employment opportunities, developing employment opportunities for SEND young people, had a celebration event for employers who give opportunities to young people. It was absolutely fantastic to hear some of the stories of those young people involved, to see the work that is done. The Wiltshire Employment Support Team, indeed. They've got evidence of really transformative work for individuals that they're doing. I was sat with a young lass, Amy, who is working as a park ranger at Longleat, and could not stop talking about how exciting it was for her to have a paid job, to be in there, to be part of that team, and to be doing things. I think the memories of Timmy on stage will be there for a long time. Laura, you will recall Timmy on the stage. Like, he should be on the West End, I think, actually, with his charisma on that stage. But a real impact, and some fantastic work that team do. I'll give notice to our officer corps that the questions I came away from that last night is why we're not doing that more in-house here at Wiltshire Council, and that's an area we'll be exploring down the line, because we can't ask employers to take people on doing things that we're not prepared to do ourselves. So a journey for us to do there. But beyond that, I don't think there was some interesting stuff coming out from the LGA conference. A lot of speculation about what the SEND reforms are going to be in the autumn that we were hearing about earlier, but no real meat on the bones yet that takes us anywhere. Beyond that, I've only been in the job 6 weeks, so I think that just about covers. I think I had time to sleep at some point, but I'm not sure when that was.
Yeah, well, I know how that feels. Yeah, that's great. And in fact, Tim, who you're referring to, he was on my table. He works at McDonald's, and when he's lovely, a lad with Downs, I suppose that's probably in his 40s, and I said, how long have you worked there? And he said, a lifetime. Feels like a lifetime or something. He was hilarious. So that was great. Thank you, John. I think with portfolio holders, if there's anything that's relevant to your portfolio as we go through the agenda, then please make a contribution. So thank you for that. So item 7, and you will have all read your agendas. There are a number of what we call standard reports that previously we had sort of got to the point where we would sort of take them as read, saying that everyone's read them. If they've got any questions, ask in advance. But at our briefing, we thought that because many of us are new to this committee, that it was important that people did have a chance to discuss things. We haven't got many substantive items on the rest of the agenda. That will change. But we just thought this was an opportunity for people to if you've read your reports thoroughly, that you've got an opportunity to ask questions. So we'll spend a little bit more time on these today than we normally would. So if we start with the first report, which is the school Ofsted judgments, is there anyone from either the executive or the officer team who want to introduce this report? Louise, go ahead. Can the summaries be, can we have a very succinct summary for each report, really just highlighting the areas that you think we as a committee should focus on? I don't want a presentation of the report. I want the key items.
Yeah, sorry, that's fine. Okay, I suppose as it is the first, I mean, it's going to waffly. Okay, so this report obviously presents the overall outcomes from Ofsted inspections during the period outlined here. So, and it will always be published inspections in terms of outcomes. And as you will, I'm sure you'll know, I set it out in the report, we are in an interim period in Ofsted inspections. Previously we had the singular judgments. This year, because of all the stuff we're having the judgments across the sort of the 6 different areas, sorry, which has meant that, so that's what you've got, more detail in terms of judgments against those. So it's not a singular judgment. And as I'm sure you're very well aware, Ofsted are still deciding what inspection looks like in September. That they won't start inspection till November, so we're waiting for that change. So this report is a collation of what's happened this year in terms of outcomes for schools, and then obviously what that will look like in the future. So I will draw you down to table 1, which is on page, I think it's on page 15 there of your report. So that is around published outcomes for section 5 inspections. They're the graded inspection, the full inspection, if you like, for every school. And you can see there the report, then we report against National, South West and Wiltshire. Our quality of education judgments, as you can see, are in terms of the good inspection outcomes are above National South West. So that's, teaching and learning, what the diet the children and curriculum are getting in the classroom. So that's the important judgment there. The bit that we want to improve, I suppose, is our outstanding judgments within Wiltshire. You can see there that's 5% against National and South West there, particularly against National, and that is an area of focus for us. Behaviour and attitudes, as you see, sits above National. And then our personal development outcomes, we're pleased with there, because that does sit within the outstanding and the good range at or slightly above national outcomes. And then our leadership and management grades, again, the effectiveness of our leaders within schools for good are above National, 11% in the outstanding. But if you put those together, that is a healthy judgment. So that feels that our schools we have capable, strong leaders within schools providing a good quality of education. So those are the sort of celebrational aspects of that. You can see in terms of sixth form provision, we have limited sixth forms in Wiltshire, but you can see that 100% of those are judged good. And then our early years provisions are the bit where, again, we are slightly down, and that's an area of focus again as we move into next academic year. That is, I would say, though, however, quite a national picture for an area of focus. Going on to table 2, that breaks down those section 5 inspections into all schools, and then it splits it across primary and secondary, as you can see there. So our secondary outcomes are, we've only had 3 secondary inspections this year, so as with all data, this is slightly kind of overrepresentative, but we're really pleased that all our secondary schools are judged good. And then for our primaries, our outcomes are predominantly at and around National, certainly for quality of education. I say behaviour and attitudes, that reflects the top table, and personal development also. So we know with our primary, there's a little bit there to raise our outcomes, although we have got some outstanding judgments in primary there are fairly decent. If we go into the table, you can see the trends across section 5 inspections. So there's been an improvement in outcomes for qualities of education across this year. So that's been really positive. And that just gives you the trends around the different judgments. Table 4, not only do we have the graded inspections, but we also have ungraded inspections. So those will be for schools that require improvement, and they have monitoring inspections to make sure that they are on track to become good at next section 5. And also those will be for good schools where they think they don't need a full inspection, just to check that they continue to be good. And the outcomes for Wiltshire there are positive. All of our schools are taking effective action where they are less than good currently, and you can see there most of them are either standards maintained, so at next inspection really confident they will continue to be good, or good plus, and then they improve significantly. We've got quite a number there who where they think if they were inspected for a full section 5 they may well be more than good, which when I go back to we want more outstanding schools, that feels like a positively improving picture across at Wiltshire. So that's kind of a summary. Is that all right, Laura?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. So open to questions, Joe.
Thank you. My only question really is around the early years Ofsted, where we're at 20% requires improvement, and I appreciate that was for those inspections that had happened at that point. But bearing in mind that obviously, as we all know, the early years sets the foundation, and if you get that right, then obviously that able to follow that through. Otherwise, you're forever playing catch up, and that's difficult. So I suppose looking just for reassurance around how we are, that would have been disappointing, I know. So looking for reassurance about how we're addressing that.
Yeah, it is a priority anyway for the Southwest. Emma Cook, who is the manager for service manager for early years, she and I work and school effectiveness. We work really closely together, and we've just been week before, down to a conference within in Exeter that is working with Ofsted, etc., looking at key strategies to improve outcomes there. I've just done some analysis on it. We know that the areas that are which are meaning that our outcomes are not where we want them to be in the early years is about word reading, writing, and then number and pattern in maths. It's that specific. All other aspects actually we perform really highly in. So we've already got an EEF project which is focusing called Cracking Communication, which quite a number of our schools have worked on. The EEF is a national research body education endowment fund. They're really respected, and we've got a lot of funding from them where we've worked with, I think that was of 30 schools, and we got a wave 2 focusing on the early years in year 1, oracy, and then into reading and writing. So that is continuing. But also between our early years team and ourselves in school effectiveness, we've got a really key project now about and strategy about really focusing and targeting schools where we need to raise those standards across. And I can share that strategy with you when it's written, and then and obviously report impact of that as we go forward into next year. Is that okay?
Any other? Yes, sorry. Yeah.
Just two things. This is the first time I've come to this report, so please excuse my first question. Is there any opportunity for looking at long-term trends in some of this data? So I can see we've got a year's worth. It would be quite interesting for me to see, are we improving, maintaining over long term?
Yeah, of course, and we used to be able to do that when we had the singular grade. The problem is because they've gone from an Ofsted inspection where there was a singular grade and we could do that to the 6 grades, we haven't got that data, which is why if you went back to the first report this year, I only had 1, which is really frustrating because I completely agree. But we will do our best, and but the problem will be in September. We have no idea what the inspection framework will look like.
And that was my question too, really, coming with the change of scoring. Evidently, we've had another change of scoring just prior to this. Maybe can we look into how we can get some continuity with the data, even if it's not strictly scoring like for like, just so that otherwise you're going to be in the dark right from the start.
Yeah, obviously you'll have outcomes data, which will be, Key Stage 1, GCSE, all of that, but that's not the same as Ofsted data. So yeah, can have a look at that. I mean, yes, it won't be vastly different. They'll still look at teaching and learning. They'll still look at behaviour. They'll still look at leadership and management. What they judge, the criteria, that might change slightly, but yeah, can certainly have a look at something that will help me navigate that. Yeah.
I agree. I think I've always had this obsession with seeing the lines, so you can understand, because graphs, bar charts are one thing, but you can't put it in context. So I think that's a really good question. John.
Can I just ask a question about, you made reference to specific aspects of early years learning, and you talked about support being made available for schools where developments required there to bring about improvement. What sort of process is involved in that? Do we have the capacity to deliver support and then subsequently review the progress?
Yeah, so in terms of our maintain, so we've got our maintained schools, which obviously as a local authority we have that specific duty over, and then we've got academy schools. So in terms of direct work with our maintained schools, yes, that's the role of my team and Emma's team to be able to identify and work with any school where they need to be, you know, to improve outcomes and work with them on that. So we absolutely have the capacity to do that. Our plan will be about making the best use of our teams and best value and all of those things. But we also tend to work in a kind of universal, targeted and specific way. So our universal offer, which will be the Cracking Communication Project, for example, that I talked about earlier, is a universal offer for all schools within the local authority, regardless of being academy or maintained or anything like that. You know, that's up to school leaders to identify that. So that is something that's universally available. As we put our strategy together, because now we've done a bit more of a deep dive into what are the sort of inhibitors for outcomes, I suppose, we will put together some universal training courses as well. And those are reasonably easy to do in terms of capacity, because certainly within school effectiveness, we've got, got quite a large team of people who are able to put on courses that we can do online, we can record them, we can develop materials, and we've already started to do that. And also Emma's team will interject with that. So I don't know if they've just waffled around that, but what we'll do is we'll have a sort of training package for all that they could go into, and then that more targeted approach.
Just as a follow-up question, is the support delivered in the classroom, or is it purely through courses?
Both. So if it's a targeted piece of work, so if it's a school that really needs to directly, you know, we are concerned, or they are concerned themselves, obviously, about raising standards. Yes, we are in the classroom. So that's absolutely what we do. We work with leaders in their schools, and we work in the classroom alongside those leaders to do that.
Thank you.
We do both, yeah.
Brilliant. Next question, Councillor Bates.
Hello, just a very quick question. Looking at table 1, which I'm looking at a school that houses section 5, and looking at their outcomes, 4 of the 6 are obviously showing up some aspects not so strong, though there is one area they've improved significantly. How does that follow on with under the new Ofsted framework? Do they become a school that requires improvement? How is that addressed going forward under the new framework? Table 1. Yes, the actual next. Sorry, yes, not yes. Yeah. Yes.
Can you use your mic, please,
Sorry, I thought I had it on. Apologies.
and switch off when you're not speaking, Denise?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, so if they are a maintained school, that's exactly what my team do. We will work directly with that school. We'll have a plan, provide support and all of that kind of provision to work with them until they have got to be, you know, a school that is judged good at next inspection. If they're an academy school, then they will be able to, then that's the job of the Academy Trust to do the same, to do that. And that's where monitoring visits also come in, which comes in table, whatever it was, the ungraded section 8s. That's where Ofsted will come back and check to make sure that standards are improving. Oh,
You
sorry.
must use your mic
Yes.
when you're speaking.
Sorry.
Yeah, there isn't a time period where they will say, this is the the outcomes.
Yes.
And then we will give you, say, a period of 6 months or 12 months to come back.
Yeah, in the new framework, they've tightened that up a bit, and I can't remember off the top of my head, unless Catherine can, but certainly RI schools will, there is no change in the lag about them coming back to inspect requires improvement schools. But so at the moment, they have between 18 months and 2 years before they're properly re-inspected under Section 5. That won't change, although there's much tighter timescales around the monitoring now, because that used to be a little bit more flexible. Now, I think it's something like they have to have a monitoring inspection of Section 8 within about 6 months of that first judgment, and they keep coming back. So they have tightened that up, but I just can't remember the details yet on that. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Any other questions from the panel? I just wanted to raise the issue of the fact that we've only got 5% of schools that are outstanding in Wiltshire, and whilst we can pat ourselves on the back to say good and outstanding, but we are an outlier. What are our plans to address that?
We're going to have within our strategy, and we've had it before, but without it being as successful as we wanted to focus on those schools where we've got those that have had the Section 8s that say that a NETS inspection they should be outstanding. So we already, for our maintained schools, work very closely with those leaders to think about, so what are the bits that you need to happen to maintain and improve to ensure that we've got that. So we have that direct work. And then a project that we're going to start in September will be, again, for our maintained schools, is taking them out to see other schools that are in other counties that are outstanding and think about what that looks like. The caveat around that is we don't know what the new Ofsted inspection framework will look like in terms of outstanding. And in fact, the proposal is they have a 5th judgment. They don't have an outstanding judgment. They have, can you remember what it's called, Catherine? I can't remember. It's purple. I know it's purple. Sorry, go on.
The changes for the descriptions of the judgments that came through the Ofsted consultation have been subject to a number of changes, and we think they're going to change again in the final version. But Louise is absolutely right. There's more of an expectation in the new framework, we think, that there'll be a category where essentially a school will be identified as a system leader in an area and will be positioned in order to provide best practice, support, advice, and be an exemplar really for other schools. I think we're on the front foot there because we've already identified schools both within and outside of Wiltshire, some at some distance to us, but are suitably comparable in terms of some of the contextual information where we can take groups of head teachers, and our maintained school head teachers group that we run every term is a really important and powerful voice for those improvement works that are underway. Yeah, we're excited about what the next year will bring in terms of that new learning.
Brilliant, thank you. Any other questions from anyone? No. I mean, it would seem sensible that once we do know about the new inspection regime, that we get a briefing on it, so that again we can understand what our schools are being judged against, and therefore how we're going to ensure we keep that improvement journey up. So we have a couple of resolutions to continue to receive the school Ofsted judgments as a regular report, and if everyone's in agreement to receive a briefing on the new inspection framework, I think that would be a good thing. Thank you very much. All right. Oh yes, would everyone like a glossary of terms as well? We can see academy converter, voluntary controlled school, academy converter, voluntary aided school. For instance, there's a lot of wording in there that perhaps a lot of people wouldn't naturally know. So it would be good if we could have a glossary to be included in the reports, please, for the future. Thank you very much. Excellent. Okay, moving on. So working together to improve school attendance. So there is a statutory guidance, working together to improve school attendance, issued in 2024. So this is a report of the summer this report is a summary of progress towards the implementation of that guidance. John, I think you're going to introduce it, but again, if you could just bring out the highlights, not present the whole report, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. So what we've done with this report, with the awareness of some colleagues being new to this process and maybe not having the previous reports, of course, that were shared, is we tried to just summarise some of the activity that's taken place in the last year in response to the changes to working together to improve school attendance, which became statutory in September 2024. So the first section of the report summarises some of that activity. You will know, hopefully, that the statutory guidance talks about attendance being everybody's responsibility. What we do know is a key driver of the attendance work through Wiltshire Council is through the Education Welfare Service, but absolutely it extends well beyond that across education and skills, and all services are involved in making sure we implement the support around attendance. So what we've seen is a series of interventions to support improved attendance. One is the Improving School Attendance Programme with links with school effectiveness, and Louise has just spoken, and one of her team support with that process. We've seen really good uptake from schools in relation to that programme of offer, and it looks at working together to improve school attendance, strategic priorities, shared understanding responsibilities around attendance, and how we can all make sure we're on board with improving that with a specific focus for disadvantaged learners, i.e. those with pupil premium. We've seen really good attendance as well for the Senior Attendance Champion Network. So each school has to assign a senior leader to be responsible for attendance. We've had those network meetings this academic year, again, with really good attendance. And we've had key focus discussions in those meetings, including emotional-based school absence, or EBSA, which is linked to mental health and wellbeing. We have internal data through group call. So we know that the DFE is providing data, overall data via WAND, and all schools have to engage with that. All of our schools do. But Wiltshire Council was already far ahead in terms of the data that it captured for attendance. So nearly all of our schools are now engaged and signed up, 94% with group call, which means we have pupil level data. We can analyse attendance data across the piece for all different metrics. And a really, really interesting piece and useful piece for us this year has been around reduced education plans or part-time timetables. Every school has to be offered a targeted support meeting. We have absolutely achieved that, and 91% of our schools already have received at least one targeted support meeting, and certain schools where they are lower, they have lower attendance, that they have been prioritised for more than one, and many of those have received more than one. And we have such good practice. The DFE have asked us to support with a range of mechanisms this year, CPD for other local authorities, specifically around the work we do with disadvantaged learners, and also the work we do around attendance data and how we utilise it and analyse it. But also they've asked us to support other local authorities that are struggling in terms of attendance. And very clearly the DFE have recognised that there's excellent existing and emerging practice in Wiltshire. In terms of the attendance data itself, we can see from the tables and you know, the RAG rating that we're in a really good position compared to Southwest comparators and national average comparators. That's both for published absence figures from last academic year and live WAND data from this academic year, which is indicative. Our only blips are secondary attendance. You can see that 9.1% absence for last year's absence data for secondary for overall attendance. However, what we have seen, and that's reflected in this year's WAND data as well, we're 91.4. However, what we have seen is an increase in the summer term from the live WAND data to 91.6. So the work we've done to focus on those schools where there's attendance concerns in secondary has really paid dividends. Normally attendance gradually decreases over an academic year, and actually our attendance for secondary has increased. We've included metrics as well for persistent absence, so that's below 90% attendance, and severe absence below 50% attendance. And again, you can see the improvements internally from last year to this year for persistent absence, but also that we're better than all comparators. The only exception, again, is in secondary for severe absence, which was at 4.2%. However, again, from the latest internal WAND data, we've decreased that absence for severe absence down to 4%, so some real strengths there. So the overarching message is we're in a really good position in terms of attendance data. We're better than all comparators pretty much across the piece. We're ahead of the game in terms of implementing and working together to improve school attendance. However, of course, we expect high standards in terms of attendance for all of our young people, and certainly those from disadvantaged groups. So we have a range of strategic priorities that we're working on, and that includes the revision of our Wiltshire attendance strategy planned for September 26. And we're at the process now of consulting with schools around what that looks like. And of course, we'll bring that back to appropriate mechanisms as and when we need to in advance of that being published internally. We have a range of other strategic priorities, and just a couple to pull out. We recognise the increase in rates of emotional-based school non-attendance, school absence, as I mentioned, EBSA. So we have a few roles that start in September. There'll be 2 roles within the Education Welfare Service called Attendance Re-Engagement Officers, or ARROs, and they will support children who have identified SEND and concerns around EBSA. Effectively, they will go into the family home, support that young person to improve their resilience, address some of the concerns around EBSA, work on the barriers, listen to the family and the child, and get that young person out of their bedroom into the community and ultimately back into school. We have 2 other roles that are similar that will be discharged through the local authority section 19 duty. That's where the local authority has to consider whether it has a duty under Section 19 of the Education Act 1996 to put in place education where a young person is unable to attend by reason of illness, exclusion or otherwise. And we've got those two roles also coming to fruition. And then finally, within the virtual school, we've identified a new virtual school officer to work within our extended duties team. So that's for children with child in need or children in child protection. And they will support with, addressing barriers to attendance and accessing attendance for children with a social worker. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Wakeman.
I think we're probably going to get used to this question. So I see that you've got 2 years worth of data there. Do I understand that that's because that's when data started to be gathered? Or do we have data projecting backwards so we could see a long-term trend? And then my second question sort of rolls on from that. If you think of something like employment where there's a functional 100% that isn't really 100%, is there a functional number at which we say that's the maximum achievable attendance where actually there'll be a natural level that you're not going to push past?
Thank you. So first response is that we have trend data for a significant period of time, and we've been gathering that for 20, 30 plus years. So there is significant more trend data. We have our expectations for young people. So I think I understand your second question, but children, obviously, we want them to attend 100% of the time. We know that, and research is really clear that the more they're in school, the more likely they're to obtain, the better grades they're going to get, the better qualifications, the better outcomes. We compare ourselves to in our internal data to strive for improvements each year, but equally we compare ourselves to those comparators, Southwest, statistical neighbours and national average, as you can see from the report, and that over time we've shown strong outcomes in comparison. Hopefully that answers your second question.
It sort of does. So from the first part, it would be interesting to see that long-term trend, just to see which direction it's going. Everybody will get used to this. This is something I like to see. The second question, I just wonder, is there a point at which there is a level of absence that is going to occur in a real system? We'd love 100%, obviously, 100% is best. But there must be a point at which it tops out. Do we have an understanding of what number that might be?
So the best response there is referencing that's the national average, that's the number by which we compare ourselves to. However, again, just reinforcing our expectations are really, really high. We are looking at, through the attendance strategy, whether we set a Wiltshire target for attendance. The challenge there is each school child context is completely different, so it's really difficult to set those expectations. And there is a point at which, of course, if you set a target of 97%, a child that's absent for 4 weeks in a school year will never be able to achieve that 97% in that year. So there's a real focus on improving attendance, whatever that attendance looks like. If a child's at 0% and never got that, can't come out of their bedroom, and we get them to 10%, that's a massive achievement for that child. So there's some challenges around setting targets, but ultimately, to respond to your question, we compare to national average as that benchmark.
Brilliant. Thank you. Ross. Sorry, all right, and then Joe.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, just when children who are excluded and suspended, I presume that comes into this data as well. Is there sort of extra work done with those people who excluded and suspended regularly? I know if somebody was suspended almost 1 day a week or 2 days a week sometimes. But there is work that is focused on those children, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a range of absence codes. One of the authorised absence codes is an E for exclusion. We do, of course, have some young people in Wiltshire who are excluded from school for short periods of time or suspended. And we have a range of mechanisms that support those young people. We have a behaviour support service that sits within my team also. So there's that close link with Education Welfare Service and behaviour support. They communicate really effectively, and behaviour support do a fantastic job to reduce rates of suspension for young people. Equally, we have a range of processes within our CAFE, Children Absent from Education process. One of those is a subgroup that meets every 6 weeks to review cases of young people who have been suspended with high rates of suspension. Action plans are put in place for those young people. It's a collective multi-agency response to that to make sure that where they have a social worker, they're engaged, where they have a SEND lead worker, they're engaged. So there's really clear oversight for those young people that are absent and increased rates of absence through exclusion.
Thank you. Joe.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of things. One, so I'm a member of a trust board, learning trust board. Group call, it's fantastic. The data that comes out of that is just, I have to say, is brilliant. So I hope you can get the remaining schools on board quickly. I suppose my questions probably come around the same ones that asked the trust really. Where we have severely absent children, it's awful to use the word assume, but in general, there are multi-agencies wrapped around those individuals for all sorts of different reasons. The one that always makes me twitch slightly from a safeguarding perspective is those where we've got persistent absence who are potentially just a bit under that wire, but from a safeguarding piece, you know, make me twitch. And I suppose I'm looking for just reassurance around the actions that are being taken from that perspective as well of safeguarding those young people who aren't in school.
Yeah, thank you. Really good question. And severe absence is a metric that's come out more recently than persistent absence. That was the first. And persistent absence has also changed in terms of the criteria, 80%, 85%, up to 90%. And the point of that is to raise the bar for schools in relation to understanding risk for those young people. You miss 10% of school. That's a significant amount of school if you're persistently absent every year. Schools are really, really well placed through the support from the local authority, but also through working together to improve school attendance to make sure that there are systems and mechanisms in place to support those young people that are at risk of persistent absence and then that drop into persistent absence. So I'm really absolutely confident that those young people are supported. However, we also do consider those young people through CAFE. So I've mentioned children absent from education, and there's a range of subgroups that meet every week for different areas of focus: children with a social worker, children at early help, children that are electively home educated, a bad example for persistent absence, but all those groups meet regularly and they will review those young people that arise in relation to persistent absence. What we also know is through the targeted support meetings, Education Welfare Service will flag those young people that are persistently absent. They'll talk through those cases. They'll understand from the school's perspective what's being done, and Education Welfare Service can make sure then the appropriate action is being taken. And where it's not, they'll support the school in making sure that's done.
Brilliant. Thank you, John.
Just coming back to the, you mentioned education welfare support. Is there any mechanism whereby attendance is generally reviewed and you can pick up in the early indication of a pattern developing before intervention is required? I don't think head teachers would thank me for this, but what I used to do is I would sit down with the education welfare officer, and if there was a pattern starting to emerge, I would have an informal chat with the parents to ascertain whether there's an underlying issue which that sometimes they need support with, and it sort of falls below the threshold of education welfare service getting involved because they're snowed under dealing with persistent absence. Is there any sort of process that's formally in place for that, or is that just up to the individual head?
There's absolutely an element of school making a decision around what their attendance process looks like, but the statutory guidance is really clear around the culture expected around attendance, around the graduated response. There's a clear responsibilities guide from the DfE around children that aren't attending regularly, risk of persistent absence, severe absence. So there's that graduated layered response, and all schools are aware of that. All schools need to have in place processes to pick up those children who start to be absent. And what we know from research in the DfE data is that all 44% of all missed sessions come from a child that's either 99% attendance down to 85% attendance. So there's a real drive and focus on that early intervention and early identification. And that's certainly something that through our revised strategy, we want to emphasise even more. We absolutely need to consider the risk of severe absence and the safeguarding element that was raised by colleague earlier. But also we know that early identification piece is really, really key. And schools absolutely have systems and processes in place. And they have a statutory obligation to do that, to make sure that those young people are picked up.
It's quite a complex issue, though, because you have to actually look at attendance patterns, which doesn't necessarily show up in just the raw data. And I'm not suggesting it's done, but that could be an issue around capacity as much as anything else.
Yeah, and just briefly on that, and that's why through our Senior Attendance Champions networks, we do a lot of work around how schools analyse their attendance data. The DFE have produced some really, really useful reports recently in relation to similar schools reports and banding of young people. So how many children do you have in year 7 with 95%, with 90%, with 85%? And that is helping shape a school's processes around early identification.
Councillor Cleesby and then Mike.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask some questions. I'm not as experienced at this as lots of the other people. I wondered the attendance figures there for full days absence. What do we do about soft start pupils? You know, pupils who are given a soft start so that they come in slightly later. How does that affect attendance figures, or does it not come into these at all?
So absence is recorded over 2 sessions a day. So schools must take a register in the morning and the afternoon. So all of our absence data includes any absence, whether that be for part of a session, so a morning or an afternoon, as well as for all of a session. But there are various codes that, sorry, do you want to?
No, I was just going to say, so does that mean that if a child gets to school at, say, 10 o'clock in the morning, they're marked absent for that morning session?
So schools under the statutory guidance have to clarify when their registers open and close. And if a young person attends school after the register closed, they'll be marked as a U code, which is an unauthorised absence code for attending after register close, unless they had an appointment, medical, for example, and there was evidence to support that, then it would be an authorised absence.
But if the school authorised the soft starts, does that count as unauthorised absence?
So the term soft start is, I accept the use of that, but that could be for a variety of reasons. So it might be part of a part-time timetable, a reduced education plan, as we call in Wiltshire, and then that would be a C2 code, and we'd pick that up through our mechanisms. We have an expectation that schools report reduced education plans to the local authority, so we can track that, so we can then check if that child has a part-time timetable. That's probably the main example of where a soft start would be relevant. We also have reception children in primary that would have a soft start as part of a planned integration into the school, and that's an X code and completely appropriately used by schools and monitored by us as well.
Thank you. I just have one other very, very quick question, which is yes or no. You mentioned WAND earlier, which for those that don't know is a sort of data link thing. Do all Wiltshire schools have that?
100%, yeah.
Mike.
Thank you. It's moving on slightly from Joe's point as well. Are we doing any work to understand and record some of the reasons for absence? Because I would suggest that a lot of the absences, especially for people who belong just below that threshold for an ECHP or SEND, a lot of those absences would be down to bullying. And obviously, probably all schools have a certain element of bullying, but some will be better than others. And I think it'd be really useful to understand or to be able to identify if there are particular schools that have a particular problem leading to those level of absences, so we can try and instigate some work to address that problem.
Yeah, that's a really important question. So again, schools will absolutely make sure that they apply in the statutory guidance for, which means the support first approach, listening to the child, listening to the family to understand the barriers to attendance. That's the first port of call. So schools will be doing that with families through their attendance processes and mechanisms to make sure that they understand the reasons and the barriers for attendance. And sometimes that will be bullying, and then the expectation would be that obviously the school support in addressing that. Equally, through our targeted support meetings with an education welfare officer, they will they will have those discussions. They will check if the school is aware of the reasons and the barriers to attendance. So again, there's that robust quality assurance of making sure the school are applying the statutory guidance effectively. We also have through the various attendance codes, we do an annual analysis, well, more frequently than that, but as an annual analysis of the attendance codes to understand, is illness code increasing from this year compared to last year, term-on-term trend? Is reduced education plans increasing or decreasing? So we can then do the analysis and plan our strategic support for schools where, for example, there's increased rates of exclusion or there's increased rates of use of a part-time timetable or reduced education plan. So there's that work done through the local authority as well. But absolutely, schools have to apply the support first model, listening to the voice of the child and the parent around the reasons for absence, and then supporting with addressing those barriers.
That's good. Denise?
Just very quickly, just following on, as somebody who produced attendance data on a weekly basis in the local school, and it was a primary setting, just to say in-house, it was looked at in quite detail. I would have a regular meeting where children under a certain percentage, we would discuss with the head teacher and our family link worker. Some of them were quite, we could actually straight away say, no problem, child perhaps being seriously ill, had been in hospital, convalescing, obviously their attendance had dropped. Other ones were perhaps concerned, that was straight away go to the family link worker, who obviously worked with families. Also with our governing body, that was a regular agenda item to discuss with our governing body. So I think, it was looked at very thoroughly. What I would just say about the figures that we have been shown, I would be very interested, like I say, exclusion has come up. I'd be very, very interested to see the exclusion figures and the trend within Wiltshire, particularly again, obviously Southwest and national figures, because we are very aware that it is a problem in our schools, probably much more at secondary level, though we did see it at primary level as well with certain children. So that's something maybe in the future I'd like to see. Is that something possible?
Yes, absolutely. For example, we've just had published figures for suspensions and permanent exclusions, which gives us those national comparators and Southwest comparators. We've got a report that's planned in for Performance Outcomes Board at the start of September, where that data will be shared for scrutiny. And I'm happy that that comes here as appropriate following.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, Councillor Fine, go.
Just for my own clarification, children educated at home, does that fall within your remit?
Yes, it does. So elective home education, there's a lot that falls within my remit. So yes, elective home education is part of the Education Welfare Service. We've got that really clear join up between those education welfare officers supporting schools and also the education welfare officers that work exclusively for electively home educated children.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions. So we refer to the fact that 94% of schools are engaging on the group call, which Joe says is very good. What are we doing about those ones that are not engaging? And are we happy that they are addressing the issue of absence?
Yeah, good question. Just to be clear, we can absolutely still see a significant amount of attendance data for those schools. We've got one data because they're all signed up. We have, with nearly all of them, engagement through targeted support meetings. So we have a good level of data for those schools. We know that in the last 12 months, we've increased the number of schools engaged with group call. So I think it's gone up by something like 18 schools, can't remember exactly, which is really good. So we've got the last few now. There's no statutory obligation for schools to engage with that. It's about strong relationships and supporting the narrative of why there's benefits to sharing that data with us, and it helps us to target support more readily. I will be writing a letter to those schools. That was due to be written this term. I haven't actually achieved that yet, but the number's been gradually creeping down, so it's worth waiting because we've been having those conversations with those school leaders around engagement, and I'll shortly write to the remaining small group of schools, predominantly Church of England primary schools, a couple that haven't engaged yet.
All right, thank you for that. And then just a final question was on the pupils with an EHCP. We haven't really touched on that. I mean, the overall attendance is about 86%. I don't know how that compares to national, but I suppose what worries me about children with an EHCP who are not attending school is that because we haven't got the right provision for them, and therefore they're not going because they're not getting the support they need. I mean, those numbers seem quite high to me, although you'll probably say for EHCP that's quite good, but I just worry about children who aren't getting the right provision.
Yeah, thank you. So the first thing to recognise is that the attendance of children that attend special schools, so those with obviously those will have an EHCP, is really strong. It was significantly above national in the spring term, and it's still better than national now. So you're absolutely right that it's a key area to flag. We know that there's a range of reasons why children with an EHCP might not attend. Some of them will be related to medical needs and whether that's physical or mental health, which might be a barrier to attendance. So there is a lot of analysis that's done at a pupil-based level around those rates of EHCPs and their attendance. Again, there's a CAFE group specifically around statutory send, so we can pick up those young people that are persistently absent or severely absent and put in place action plans for them accordingly. The gap is for every vulnerable group. The gap is always too big in my eyes because we have high, as I said, high expectations around supporting vulnerable learners, particularly given that's a vision within targeted education. But we're absolutely aware of where there are gaps in provision for EHCP learners, and there's a significant amount of work that's gone into the sufficiency space around special schools, etc. And we know that is paying dividends in terms of our attendance figures for those within the EHCP.
I just would like to add to that to say that as school effectiveness, we also look at provision. So, you know, in terms of that general provision, so we have got the mainstream inclusion advisors. So where inclusion data is suggesting that, and that ties up with where attendance is lower, and we think that might be about that sort of quality of education. We obviously can provide support and work with schools to look at their curriculum, their provision, that is also, as you're suggesting, Laura, about, you know, are they providing the best provision for those individual learners. So it's a nice tied up piece, really, isn't it, between Targeted Ed and ourselves.
Great, sorry. Oh, sorry, one more, because I'm very...
Just a very quick question, more to do with coming back to Ofsted, because they're forever moving the goalposts, as I'm fully aware. At what point in mainstream education, say primary and secondary, is the threshold where it is deemed to be a negative aspect of school performance, and how does that skew the overall judgment of the Ofsted team?
We'll probably tag team this between Louise and I. So if I just pick up the first aspect around Ofsted from a local authority perspective, what we know is our systems and processes and attendance work is scrutinised significantly through Ofsted inspections. We had that in the Inspecting Local Authority Children's Services inspection and also the recent SEND inspection. And we know that we've come out gleaming from that in relation to the work that we do around attendance. I'll come to Louise in a second for the a specific answer around an individual judgment from a school, but there is no one figure that an inspector would look at to say that if you're below that, that will definitely change your judgment. It's all about, is the school taking robust action to address non-attendance and support families? Are they meeting the expectations in the statutory guidance, working together to improve school attendance? They use the metrics of persistent absence and severe absence and the comparators there certainly to try and understand where a school is placed in terms of their attendance data. But equally, the similar schools report I mentioned earlier is really key because we know that schools have different contexts. A school might have 75% of their children that are pupil premium. They might have 50% of their children within the HCP. They might be in a really rural area with low transport links. And we recognise in Wiltshire that geography is a really key part of our county. So actually, inspection activity is really difficult to gauge from that perspective. It's all about individualised, personalised context.
I'm pleased to hear Ofsted are doing that. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap this up because we've still got a lot to get through. But thank you very much, everyone. That's a really good debate. I have a resolution to read out. To continue to receive the Working Together to Improve School Attendance report, and particularly to include longer term trends as you requested, to receive a separate report on exclusions and trends. And I don't know if anyone feels they need a further briefing on this particularly. I think we've followed it fairly comprehensively today. No, everyone's feeling on top of it. So thank you very much. That was really comprehensive. Thank you very much. Okay, the Department for Education update. Has anyone got anything particular they want to raise on this one? It's more for information. Nope, that's fine. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. So Schools Forum, I'm inviting Stuart Parman, who's the portfolio holder for schools, to introduce the role of Schools Forum and how it works with the council.
Okay, right, the Wiltshire Schools Forum is about money, really. I'll read this off. The Wiltshire Schools Forum is a statutory body which local authority, Wiltshire Council in this case, is required to consult on the following functions. Consultation on the school funding formula, which we've discussed slightly earlier, and consultation on contracts and consultation on financial issues. The majority of the forum members are school members. There's 5 elected maintained school head teacher representatives, 7 elected academy representatives, 4 elected governor representatives, and those 16 members, along with 2 early years representatives, are the only members that are actually allowed to vote on the funding formula. There are also nominated service partner representatives, 1 diocesan representative, 1 teacher representative, and those 20 members have 1 vote on the other side, on other aspects. In addition to that, there's 5 invited observers. I won't list them all off. And then there's the cabinet member for children's services, education and skills, and adult social care, SEND and inclusion. Also the portfolio holder for education, myself, and SEND are also invited to attend. There's a list of bullet points of the different things that we covered during the meeting. I won't go through those in detail. There will be detailed minutes that are put out later. I will say that from my perspective, the thing that I took away from there, which has already been mentioned, is the underfunding of Wiltshire relative to other areas. One of the heads said he had been in a school in Greenwich, normal state school, walked through that school, and he could physically see the difference in funding in terms of the resources he saw in each of the classrooms, you know, that he walked through. And that is extremely frustrating. And we talked about F40 again, that was one of the subjects. And I'm really pleased to hear that John's followed up on that, because we all felt, you know, our MPs should be fighting this corner. And I think I will leave it at that unless there's any questions.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you, Stuart. So you've attended one of the meetings?
Yes.
Yeah. Excellent. Good. Any other questions from anyone here? No.
While I've got the microphone, also attended the Wiltshire Learning Alliance, which is say a similar group, but a group that's set up to improve learning across Wiltshire and sharing best practice, etc. I really enjoyed that meeting. One thing I took away, there's a lot of talk about terminology used, and they started mentioning a new acronym, LEDs. Now, I'm from an electronics background, so that's a light emitting diode, and I'm having to reprogram my brain. But learners experiencing disadvantage, and I thought that was a really good one, rather than disadvantaged learners or learners with pupil premium or whatever. It put learners right at the beginning and separated them from their disadvantage. And I think that's some terminology that will filter down through things.
I hadn't heard of that, so that's good.
The one other disturbing side from that, I could understand what the Wiltshire Learning Alliance is trying to do and be involved in all the stakeholders that are involved with that. But there is another group that appears to be coming out called Lifting Wiltshire, which sounds like it's set up by a few of the CEOs of some of the multiple academy groups. And we were worried that could have essentially have the same remit, and trying to combine those 2 organisations.
I think we've got an update on that, Stuart.
Okay.
Catherine will be able to fill you in.
I think what's really pleasing is that we're all working towards the same priorities around learners experiencing disadvantage. And I've been in contact with one of the CEOs who's part of that working group to talk about how we can bring that alongside the Wiltshire Learning Alliance work as one system. So it's really encouraging and really excellent to know that there's that shared understanding and motivation to improve outcomes for learners experiencing disadvantage.
That is the, along with SEND, I think our what's that, learners experiencing disadvantage is a really key thing for us to do as a council, so we need to concentrate on that. Dom.
Thank you. Just a quick one, Catherine. I want to put you on the spotlight here, but I don't suppose you know the stakeholders for, did you say it was Lifting Wiltshire? Lifting Wiltshire, is that what you said it was called?
Yeah, and it's not a substantive group in its own right. I can find some more information, Dom, and share that.
Yeah, just be out of interest. Thank you.
Any other questions on this one? No, excellent. So our resolution is to continue to receive updates on Schools Forum, and I think probably a verbal update is enough. So excellent, thank you very much. Item 7E is the Corporate Parenting Panel. So I'm going to invite Sam Pearce-Kearney, who's the portfolio holder for safeguarding and young people, to introduce the role of the Corporate Parenting Panel and any questions that people might have on the report. Thank you, Sam.
So I'll start with an update which I would have given in the Cabinet Member section. John Stewart and I attended the Star Awards on the 20th of June, and they were truly inspiring. These celebrations for young people in care and care experienced individuals, recognising their resilience, progress and community spirit. From Smashed It for overcoming challenges to Future Pioneers for progress in education and taking part for making a difference, the awards were about telling our young people, we see you, we're proud. It was a truly amazing occasion. So moving on to Corporate Parenting Panel. But before I begin, I note that my agenda item, or this agenda item, is the only one which asked for a very brief update. Chair, am I not known for my brevity at every occasion?
You will be if you pass the test.
So Corporate Parenting Panel is a responsibility, corporate parenting is a responsibility we all share, every councillor, every officer, and our partners too. It's about doing everything we can to support the children and young people in our care and care leavers, just like any good parent would. That means helping them feel safe, supporting them in their education and well-being, and preparing them for life beyond care. The Corporate Parenting Panel plays a key role in making sure that we're doing well. We provide strategic oversight, ask tough questions, and work to improve outcomes. It's a multi-agency group, elected members, council staff and partners working together to make sure services are joined up and effective. One of the most important parts of the panel is the involvement of our voice ambassadors, young people with lived experience of care. They attend meetings, share insights and help shape our work. Their voices are central to everything we do. Each panel member also takes on one of the 5 strategic priorities from our 23 to 26 corporate parenting strategy, working alongside a council officer and voice ambassador to track progress and drive change. The update in your pack relates to the March meeting, which was before I took on this role, so I'll just leave it as read. But I thought I'd take a moment to spotlight the corporate parenting strategy, so maybe I won't pass the brevity test. But I think it's important. It's our shared commitment to doing better for our young people. So it's built around 5 key priorities. Relationships, making sure every child has a trusted adult or trusted adults in their lives and the opportunity to build long-lasting positive relationships. A good place to live, ensuring children and young people live in a safe, stable, nurturing home that meets their needs, fulfilling potential, supporting access to high-quality education, training, employment opportunities so every young person can achieve their goals, being heard, actively listening to young people, valuing their views and making sure their voices shape the services they receive, and the last one, successful adulthood, helping care experienced young people transition to adulthood with the right support skills and opportunities to live independently and confidently. What makes this strategy especially meaningful is it was co-produced with the young people themselves. Their experiences and ideas and aspirations are woven throughout, and that's what gives it real strength. If you've not had a chance, I'd encourage you to take a look at the strategy, and that is it from me. Thank you.
You passed, Sam. It's brilliant. Well done. Thank you. Excellent. I can highly recommend the corporate parenting panel. I've sat on it my entire time as a counsellor, 16 years, and I've just seen the changes that we've brought in to improve the lives of children who come into our care, and it's great to be part of that journey, and most importantly is to meet the young people who are absolutely brilliant and always kind of put you in your place and give you a perspective on life, I think. So I do recommend it if there's ever a vacancy or you want to sell, but I would get in there because it is absolutely great. I want to, have any members got any questions on anything that Sam has said today? No, excellent. You see, you were brief and informative, so you know it's great. Also, I want to thank those panel members who fed back on the corporate parent annual report, and we had some good summaries that came back. I can read this, that the committee members welcome the annual report from the corporate parenting panel, which members found informative and clear to read. Members were pleased to hear about the positive impact of the Mockingbird programme and continue to be impressed by the work of the Voice and Participation team. The report is clear about the need for more placements and further recruitment of foster carers, and the report acknowledges too the need to keep improving the number of our young people in education, employment and training. There were concerns expressed about the levels of missing episodes, but Julie and I talked about that. It's a terrifying word to read, that it just says children missing. And I remember in my first meeting as corporate parent, it just said children missing 1. And I said, well, where are they? And it transpires that they were an unaccompanied asylum seeker who'd come into the county and had disappeared instantly. But still, there was this horrible feeling that there was a child missing. So we might organise a briefing on what missing means, because what it actually means is the child perhaps came back from school late, or went out and went past their curfew. So it doesn't mean they've just disappeared off the face of the earth. So we can look at, and also as a corporate parenting panel, we really do review missing. There's a whole report on missing episodes. So I can reassure this committee that that is not something that's just allowed to drift. So in conclusion, the report provides a comprehensive summary of the achievements of the past 12 months, as well as the ongoing challenges. And so our resolution today is to continue to receive updates at every meeting, or to receive an annual report only. I think possibly an annual report is probably enough, because the corporate parenting panel is doing its job. That's what it's there. So I think as a select committee, annually is probably enough if everyone's happy with that. Excellent. Thank you, Sam. Really good. And that leads us nicely on to the Voice and Participation Annual Report, which is when my heart sank when I saw the length of the agenda for today and realised that most of it was the Voice and Participation Report, which again has already been to the Corporate Parenting Panel, but we just thought it was important that it came to this committee, if only to see the breadth of the work that goes on. And this is a service that has just grown extraordinarily in the last few years, and very much for the better. We used to really struggle to be able to really have proper conversations with our children, particularly who are in care, because we seemed to get the same cohort of 3 who appeared at every meeting, and I always felt that they were not representative of the whole population of children. And so now it's become an enormous system, which is just great, because it's really getting to the bottom of what our young people want. Is Joe due to present the report? No, he's not. Okay, so I don't think we need to, we don't need a presentation on it. It's very comprehensive, but I'm very happy for people to make comments, or have they got any questions, Joe?
The only comment I wanted to make was, again, the breadth of the work that the voice and participation team are doing now is nothing short of phenomenal. But and I have fed back to Joe as well, but I'm particularly impressed now with what's happening with the youth justice voice work. I think really, really important, and also the additional work happening with young carers. So, you know, again, I think every time we're seeing reports from voice and participation team, it just feels like they're building more and more really positive action, which makes a real difference. So.
Thank you. And I think, I mean, I was just looking that we, you know, we're mentoring children in primary school now and secondary, and I think all this helps with the early intervention programme that we've proved does work here in Wiltshire as far as getting in early, helping families and children as quickly as we can. So it's important that we keep doing that, and having care leavers mentoring and the independent visitor system, all those things. I hope that the new administration will continue to support, because we have seen the impact of that. Excellent. Good. Okay. So
Rest assured, Laura. Rest assured.
Thank you. That was just a gentle thrust across there to make sure. Excellent. Okay. So resolution to receive an annual report, and again this does come to corporate parenting, so I think annually is enough here, and it's a regular item at corporate parenting, so we're continually updating ourselves on what they're doing, and they keep us in the loop, so I feel confident on that. So moving on to item 8, which is the final report of the Youth Homelessness Rapid Scrutiny Group. An Ofsted inspection in September 23 found children's services in Wiltshire to be outstanding. However, it found that the support provided to a small number of children aged between 16 and 17 who are homeless or at risk of homelessness was not effective. The aim of the rapid scrutiny was to consider the actions taken in response to the inspection findings. The report of the Rapid Scrutiny Group, which is on pages 71 to 78 of your agenda pack, was endorsed by the Children's Select Committee on the 12th of March. However, the committee is asked to approve the report now to enable it to be progressed to an executive response. Overall, the Rapid Scrutiny Group found the measures taken seemed to provide a more child-focused approach and greater oversight of the process to ensure a consistent response. And the group recommended a follow-up rapid scrutiny to review if the new practices were embedded. For those of you who've read the report, I just want to ask, did any questions come out of it? Because I read it and wondered why, I sort of wondered why it was in here, and then now I've understood it's because we need to say that it can now go to the executive, who will look at the recommendations. And for those of you who are new to scrutiny, the executive say, yes, we agree with these recommendations and we'll act, or no, we don't, or we partially agree and we will do X or Y. So it would be good for us to be able to move this away from us and back to the executive. If anyone's got any questions on it, Joe, did you run it?
No real questions, other than the fact that I thought, considering it was a rapid scrutiny, that actually is very thorough, and the recommendations I thought were really good. So really happy that goes forward now to ask for a response.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions from anyone in the committee? Everybody happy for us to do that? Excellent. That was easy. Okay, so item 9 is the executive response update on the education performance and outcomes rapid scrutiny. So in January this year, the committee endorsed the final report of the Education Performance Outcomes Rapid Scrutiny Group. The aim of the rapid scrutiny was to work with officers to develop an accessible report on to support informed scrutiny of education performance outcomes. An executive response was provided in March 2025, and the committee has received a progress report starting on page 79. And I suppose what our question is when will the new report be ready for the committee to review? I don't know who's going to take that.
Yeah. So there's going to be 2 reports. So we agreed there'd be one in, I think it's the October and November one for EYFS, phonics and primary outcomes. Yeah. And there'll be one in March for GCSEs and A-levels. And that's because of the publishing, and there's a whole load of data cleansing, so the figures aren't accurate if we did just one report with all of those in as well, it would be a weighty tome. So is that, if that's okay with everybody, that
Yes.
feels.
That's fine. Anyone else got any questions or anything they want to ask on this? Nope, that's fine. We note the update report and so request that the separate primary and secondary education outcomes report comes in either September. Which months did you say?
Sorry, it would be the October one for primary and EYFS, and it would be March for secondary, so GCSEs and A-levels.
Okay, you're right with that. Right, we've got those. Excellent. Okay, so item 10 is a rapid scrutiny of the out-of-county education update. The focus of this rapid scrutiny was on children who were in the catchment area of a school in another county and to ensure that they were not disadvantaged as a result. As with the previous paper, the report on the rapid scrutiny group was received by the committee in January and there was an executive response in March. It's brought to the committee today as there are outstanding actions to be taken. So I think someone's going to brief us on this today. No?
I can do
All
it.
right, Catherine.
The outcome from the rapid scrutiny was a request for a further briefing to answer the remaining questions that had been set by the members of that committee. That then fell in the gap following the local elections. So I've recommended that we set a pre-meeting briefing date for September for that briefing to be shared.
So are we going to do that? Can we do that before the next Children's Select Committee? Or have we got other plans for that?
We could. There are some other things. We haven't got anything definite.
Okay, all right.
So it's
Well, we might just hold a separate briefing. Yeah, we'll work out a time for us to receive that briefing so that everyone's updated on that. Excellent. So yes, to receive a briefing in line with the recommendations in the report. Time to be confirmed. If that's all right. Excellent. So we move on to item 11, which is the forthcoming work programme. And obviously this is a work in progress because on Monday, both I and the Vice Chair are meeting with the executive to discuss what your priorities are going to be for the next 4 years. So I think I would rather hear from you on what those are before we agree what our forward work programme is for this committee, because you may have new initiatives that are not on here that we don't know about. And I don't want us to sit here sort of agreeing what our task might be when actually it might change completely. So are you happy with that as a course of action? And will all your portfolio holders be there on Monday, or is it just you? Yeah. I mean, have they been invited? Yeah. Okay. Well, that's obviously up to you as far as, yeah. Okay. Excellent. Good. Are there any urgent items? No. Oh, have I got to have a resolution? To approve the continuing development of the committee's forward work programme. Is everyone happy with that? Excellent, thank you. Okay, are there any are there any urgent items? No, okay. So the next meeting is the 3rd of September, which will be in Kennet, and hopefully cooler by then. The meeting in November has been rescheduled because it clashes with something else. So just check your diaries because that meeting has been moved. So hopefully everyone can make that. Have we got a date?
13th?
I think it's possibly the 13th of November. Sorry? Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, we can work on that. But and just a reminder to anyone who can't attend meetings to always find a substitute if possible. Thank you. Any other questions from anybody? Thank you very much. It's been a good meeting. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.